Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast. This is our video edition with Doug Skene, Michigan's former All Big Ten offensive lineman, five-time Big Ten champion. Also played for the New England Patriots, Bill Parcells, no less, and had his knee wrecked by Chester McLaughlin, or he still might be playing in the league. So at
Yeah,
51,
I
51
doubt
years
that.
old? All right, probably not. That might be a stretch, but in short, this guy knows his football, and this guy had to be just absolutely loving what he was seeing on Saturday. Our producer Hutch was not Penn State fan, but Doug Skene was, and I got to tell you, Skene, that 1992 line is still one of my favorites ever. These guys, the way they're playing, the way that they are bullying people, are impressing the hell out of me. They are, I'm telling you, top three lines that I've seen in probably 30, 40 years in terms of just flat out bullying people, playing with that nasty. And 41-17 was the final, but the stat for me was 418 yards rushing
That's crazy.
against the Penn State team that had Hutch told me given up 396 all year, and they were top five in the country. So I think the question was answered about which of these teams is for real, if either one of them. And there's still going to be bigger tests to come. Ohio State is really the one, but look at these numbers. You just had to be in heaven, man, hog heaven.
Well, anytime you see a defense get decimated like that and demoralized like that, I mean, it was early in the third quarter. It was clear that Penn State's body language was telegraphing that we have no answer for this. We have no,
Yeah.
we got nothing.
Where are
Hands
the
up.
where are the
We're
chicken
chicken
sandwiches?
sandwich time, baby. Because
Yeah.
we're just running out this clock. So yeah, of course I love watching every minute of that. And then Balas, it's why? What happened? Well, they just did some really nice fundamental blocking, is what happened. And the big ones that we'll talk about a little bit. There's some really nice blocks on the edge out there on the Edwards run, and then on the Corum run there, the bigger one. Oluwatimi in the middle and Keegan there at left guard, and Zinter, really the interior of that offensive line, really sealing backside linebackers, and just some really good stuff. Um, and I thought there was a replay that I remember watching. I was watching the game. I ran it back. Keegan comes up and gets on a linebacker, and they don't always have to be devastating
Right.
on the ground, belt buckle in the nose kind of blocks, but just effective, hands-on, get the hips in the position, and it was just really clean stuff. Not without some negative plays, because we still had some of those, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But overall, that was a total ass kicking, Dallas. Yeah.
That's the only way to put it. In fact, Jim Harbaugh said in the locker room after the game, he said to these guys, that was a butt kicking, and they got jail sandwiches. They got their butt kicked in every way a butt can be kicked, and that's what the players said in the post game interview room. It was fantastic, and to see the smiles on their faces. You know what really impressed me was here you got a quarterback, a 5-star kid that's going to be playing in the NFL someday, and JJ McCarthy, and he said he threw for 145 yards. He had one pick, probably should have had another one. We'll talk about that. But he said, you know what? I was sitting there back and watching as impressed as all of you guys. Didn't matter to him that he only threw for 145 yards, threw the ball 24 times. What mattered to him was that they were dominating and that they were getting the win, and it was fun to watch. It was as fun for him to watch as it was for us. But when they were showing the end zone views of these runs, some of the holes. Look at Donovan Edwards, 173 yards on 16 carries. We're going to talk about him in a minute because I've been waiting for this kind of a game from him. Some of the vision that he showed early on, there were some holes that he missed, especially in the red zone.
Hmm.
He's starting to get it about the same time that Blake Corum did in his second year. 10.8 yards per carry, some of the cuts. You talked about those blocks that they had where they were just holding the linebacker. Zach Zinter on the Blake Corum run, 166 yards. He also had a 61-yard touchdown run, a pancake. And
Hmm.
what was
I
once
remember
line,
that one. Yep,
yes, you do. And
I
and
remember that one.
once and what was once linebacker you, what these guys were absolutely nowhere to be found half the time. These holes skiing. I understand when I read the comments from the Penn State fans that they were embarrassed by the performance because it was just flat out. It looked like they were playing a MAC school. I hate to say it, but it's a fact.
Well, I don't know if they were playing a MAC school, because Penn State's got more talent than your average
Hmm.
Eastern, Western, or
That's what it
Central
looked like. It.
roster, right? But the performance looked like it. But the recipe that I think Penn State's defensive game plan was a lot like we saw against Indiana. So Michigan's really effective at down blocking with a tackle and tight end, and then someone's got to kick the edge. Someone else comes around for the front side linebacker. And what Indiana showed is just if you pinch those edges and really collapse that side, it's really hard to make a living up in there. And Penn State was doing some of that too. We had a couple snaps where Schoonmaker was coming across formation, and he had a guy who was just anchoring down there in that defensive end spot. So you have to make an alternative off that. If you're not going to make a living off the C gap or off the tackle tight end area, then you got to do something else. And that Corum block was up. The Corum run was right up the middle, like A or B, just to the left side of the center. And then, of course, a Donovan Edwards curveball there, to the sideline on the short side of the field with a sweep play, just beautifully blocked on the edge by those two offensive linemen, the center and right guard. But we talk about McCarthy here, only 145 yards. How long will it be before we hear some people say, "Well, they got to let McCarthy air it out more"? Well, you know what? When you're running for 400 yards rushing, you don't need to air anything out.
No.
When you can do that,
Yeah.
and so that's any coach, I think anywhere in college football, high school, even the NFL, boy, if you could just say, yeah, are we going to run for 300, 400 yards of rushing? Well, then we're going to throw it 10 times in the whole
Right.
game.
Yep.
And, again, it's a luxury. So they're just going to keep on rolling, and Michigan's going to keep doing this. And I know they're looking over the horizon here a little bit at their next opponent and the one at the end of the season, because they got a couple emotional games coming up. But I absolutely agree. This offensive line is coming around. They're developing an attitude. But more than that, they're getting good at the fundamentals, Balas. Um, Even better at the fundamentals. I would say they've been good at the fundamentals. They're getting even better now. And as the intensity or the legitimacy of these opponents continues to rack up, we're no longer playing Colorado State and Hawaii here. These are the better teams in the Big Ten, and there's some more to come, obviously. But all the indicators are good right now for this Michigan football team.
Yeah, Adam Shepardson made a good point up there. He said, JJ is probably going to have to win a game. Maybe if he does, Adam, I think it's going to be one of those. It's either going to be Ohio State or one of the last two if they make the playoff, or maybe in a bowl game, because I don't see anybody on the schedule where you say they aren't going to be able to run on this football team. You look at Michigan State; they're getting some guys back. They're not very good, flat out. Maybe there will be a monsoon. Maybe some of that Warlock magic that Mark D'Antonio.
You
And I
never
understand they're going
know.
to. I
No.
know maybe they play hard. They're going to play hard and everything else, but that's a team that you should beat handily. Illinois is interesting with Brett
Illinois is
Bielema. Yes.
quietly bruising people over there in the Big Ten
Yep.
West, and that's
Yes.
Bielema. That's what he's known for.
Yep.
They're playing defense and they're beating people up on the ground too. So quietly, that one will be an interesting one down the road a little bit for sure.
But Adam, to your point, I think they kind of did that against Indiana when Indiana did a really nice job against the run, and they said, "Okay, we're going to let JJ McCarthy air it out a little bit more, 36 times." I think the over
Hmm.
under in that game was 25 or 26, but they put it in his hands, and they put it in his hands back when he was backed up too. That's the trust that they showed in him that, hey, things are coming along. So I think you're right, and he is a team guy all the way. And every time we interview, I get more and more impressed with this kid. And it was the same with Cade McNamara last year. It's like, you know what? I don't care what I'm doing. I care about what my team is doing. The way he talked about Donovan Edwards, you can tell the chemistry between these two guys. I
Yeah.
loved that. These guys came in together. They throw together all the time after football games and everything else. But really, the chemistry and the camaraderie, you can really sense it with these guys. And how important is that?
That is the special
Yeah.
sauce stuff there,
Yeah.
Ballas. That's what makes championship teams find new levels of altitude, and you can see it on television when you're watching these games. Certainly, if you're in person, when you see an offense come to the sideline or the defense come to the sideline after a big series and they've had a lot of success, you just see all the guys slapping each other and congratulating each other and high fiving and doing their thing. That lets you know that this team likes each other, that they care about each other. And there's been a lot of football teams that we've seen over the years. Some of them in Ann Arbor, not too many years ago, where there was all kinds of football talent, but they weren't winning big games. And you look back, and you and I talked about it a little bit in some of those body language indicators. Like, I wonder if these guys like each other.
Yeah. They
And
didn't.
it's been, I think that's well in the rearview mirror now. Last year's team changed that, and the play of Cade McNamara last year might have been in some ways a blueprint for JJ to sit and watch how to lead a football team to a championship, because we're seeing it again. At least we're on that path.
And he gave him credit for that too. He said, "I was learning from Cade McNamara." I get, and I love that. I said, "Hey,
Mhm.
I want to emulate him and the things that he did when he took over for him." So we'll talk about more of that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor, Manscaped. It says cue haunted music here. So can you cue some haunted music, Skene? Can you like, woo? I can't do that. All right.
No,
We don't ask much of you. Okay. So all right. So
can't help
Michael
you there.
so Michael Myers sure is scary, but the last thing you need is to be hairy this Halloween. Luckily, our friends at Manscaped launched their fourth generation performance package to make sure your pumpkins get the ultimate carving experience on this spooky day. Turn your bite-sized treat into a king-size candy. Enjoy the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with the code 20GoBlue. That's 20GoBlue at manscaped.com. Make the right call this spooky season. It's trick or trim. And Skene, I'm supposed to ask you, have you ever tried to trim your balls and it turned into a Freddy Krueger film? No? Okay, he has not. Okay. Well, luckily, Manscaped is here to save the day and make sure you're feeling your best in your costume, whatever that is. And so, again, unlock your confidence with the Performance Package 4.0. You'll find the holy grail of men's grooming items. They've made it easy for you to upgrade your grooming routine. I got one with the nose hair and ear hair trimmer Skene. Did you get that one yet?
Yeah, yeah. I think I
Okay.
did. Yeah,
It's
yeah. These
fantastic. It's really the best one that I've ever used. And
good tools, Balas. You got to
and
have the right tools, man.
unfortunately, yeah, right, Jim. And unfortunately, I need the ear and nose hair trimmer. I think it was Billy Crystal who said in the movie once, I'm growing hair at 40. You lose the hair up here and then it grows out everywhere else. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
we appreciate you, our sponsor at Manscaped, and you know what, we laugh, but it's a great product, and appreciate even the shampoo and everything else has been fantastic. So I feel great about my balls. So anyhow, let's talk a little bit more about football now. Uh,
Please, please
yes.
go back.
All right, let's get back to it. All right, bring up those stats again, Hutch, if you will, because there were a couple things, two other things that I wanted to mention. Were it seems to me that JJ McCarthy is getting much more comfortable with when to run and in keeping in the read option. He had a couple scrambles where it broke down, and you could see him. Okay, I know where the sideline is. I know where the marker is, and to me, that is going to be a critical in some of these games in which they ask a little more of him. If teams are going to crowd the box a little bit, that's an area in which they can really grind out some yardage.
Well, it has been, and McCarthy has been very, very effective at leaking either out either side of the pocket toward that first down marker. I think he's more comfortable to his right. Obviously, it's his throwing hand over there to the right. It'll be fascinating to see if defenses are going to do more of a fencing where you got to keep that quarterback from leaking out to the sideline and hurting you on first downs because he's very good at that. But it's definitely a threat. There was a couple snaps in that football game where he's going shoulder down and diving, and I thought there was one play where he kind of got up a little gimpy, made my heart skip a little
Yeah.
bit there. But I love the kid's tenacity and his attitude out there when he puts the ball down to run. I think you're right. He's running smart, um, but at times, it's like this kid is looking for the physical, which is for an offensive lineman, right? When a play breaks down, there's no one open or there's a leaker in the pass protection. When your quarterback is running downfield and you see him drop his shoulder, I got to tell you how exciting that is for those offensive linemen. They love every second of it because they know that guy's back there fighting. So it
Yeah.
makes you play a little bit harder up front for him the next time. So he's exciting when he does certain things, Ballas. But when he's running, and there was a couple plays out there when he's running, his throws on the run are
Mm,
unbelievable. They're
yeah.
just unbelievable. There were two games I watched, obviously yesterday, obviously our game, and then I watched the just by comparison, the kid that's playing for USC, I watched them play against Utah. A lot of similarities when they're on the run and their ability to throw the football. That's something that's not easy to do, and they're both very good at it. But McCarthy, for sure, it's a special talent. Now we know why he's a starter, right? And Cade didn't have that kind of abilities, but it's really showing up, and there's more to come. I think, no doubt, with this kid.
Yeah, it was a 35-yarder for those who didn't see it on a rope, and it was an NFL throw. And there were two things about it that impressed me the most. Number one, he's got the tight end, I think Max Bredesen, running with him. We call it for the waggle, right? And that's kind of a variation of it.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you would call it the waggle play, but you've got the tight end leaking out short, and he's just over the linebacker, and the linebacker's kind of waiting to see if McCarthy's going to run or throw over his head to Bredesen. But then he looks downfield, and boom, uh, Johnson opens up and gets to the sideline, and it was right on the money. Absolute gun. And here's
Yeah,
another impressive thing about it was there was a stiff 15-mile-an-hour wind in his face when he
out of the
threw that
north,
ball.
was
Yeah,
there?
and
Yeah,
it was actually out of the south.
was it? Yeah.
Yeah, but right in his face, and that ball got there in a hurry. So outstanding throw. Now, two things. There was one where he had that wind behind him and he was scrambling.
I
And if
didn't
that
like
wind
that one.
no, and if that wind had been in his face, that thing's pick six and you're down 7-6 when
You're
you've
talking
been
about the one that
dominating.
he floated, just floated,
Exactly, the
and
Blake
and
Corum.
and the television camera cut to Coach Harbaugh there, and Jim
Yes,
just sort of shook his head and dropped it
yes,
like, "Please don't do that. Stop doing
yes,
that." Right? There is
yes.
a time and a place. And boy, that first half of that football game, because we were kicking field goals
Yeah,
and not scoring touchdowns, things were a little tight there. So along the lines of areas for improvement, red zone offense in the first half of that football game wasn't all that great. I can't
right.
remember how many times we were in there, but yeah, so McCarthy, I think that's one of the dangers, right? This kid's got that kind of arm. He knows he does. So that it's always a temptation for him to press and maybe do a little bit more than he should. And there's going to be a time where he's going to do it. He's going to press, and it's going to be an interception. The one that got tipped and bounced off a dude's head, that was just fluke city. That's not one. That one didn't bother me nearly as much as the one that fluttered up there forever
Right.
and looked like an ill-advised pass. But this is the razor's edge when you got a kid like this who's super talented. But I think this Michigan offensive staff is bringing him along at a pace that is appropriate.
Yep. And Shep, great question. Adam Shepardson, surprised Scoot didn't have a catch. We talked about that actually yesterday, and I'm like, wow, they didn't have to throw hardly at all. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But and the play that you were talking about, the interception that was tipped and then hits a guy's helmet and bounces around. It wasn't so much the play as the play called to me. You're 3rd and 2, and to me, it's 4 down territory. Line up and smash it down their throat here. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to be doing that. That's a play. You can still spread them out a little bit and run out of shotgun. I like it when it's almost like they get a running start. They don't, but they know where the ball is going at the snap, and they're always going to get a yard or two. You got
Yeah.
2 downs to get 2 yards. To me, that's the play they got a little bit cute. I thought in the red zone as well. And then if we were still doing our in the trenches, which we will at some point, Doug, if you saw the end zone copy of the red zone play. Now, Blake Corum was blowing chunks on the field and on the
Mm-hmm.
sidelines, and that's why he wasn't in there on an early red zone opportunity. There was a hole left that he missed. I thought it was a
Mm-hmm.
really well blocked play where
Mm-hmm.
Donovan Edwards runs a little bit right. He's got a hole left. I think that's a score. So part of it I thought was more execution. I said they got a little cute at times, but then another play where McCarthy airmails one to Donovan Edwards, in the red zone where I think it's a walk-in touchdown. He's got
Mm-hmm.
blockers in front of him. So we can talk about red zone play calling, and fans are going to want to, but I thought it was more about execution.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And how many times have I said it on these podcasts over the years, Balas? The game changes inside the 20. The game changes even more inside the 10, and it is an entirely different feeling inside the 5-yard line. And I think Michigan felt that a little bit. And all the intensity and the perfection that's required of your blocking and your route running and all those things, gets magnified down when you get closer to that goal line. And Michigan wasn't doing all that great down in there. But again, Penn State in that first half, again, crashing those defensive ends, pinching that offense as much as they can off the edge, because that was Michigan's strength. And there was a couple plays in there where we got some guys across our face, Schoonmaker being one of them, from the tight end position, just getting beat across his face or getting stood up. And that's 2 weeks in a row I'm watching him for all the good things that he does. If this Michigan offense run game is going to continue to progress the way it needs to, the tight ends are going to have to come along with that offensive line and continue to get better. That's where I saw a few leakers there in the game there against Penn State back into Indiana as well. So, but yeah, inside the 10, you got to be just a little bit better, a little bit cleaner on everything. And Michigan wasn't in that first part of that football game.
Yeah, and they brought in an extra lineman, and I think it was El Hadi, who I thought got blown up on
He
the
did.
play at the goal line. Tell us what happened there.
Well, he's trying to pull around the edge, and
Right.
again, Penn State is crashing the edge. What that means is their defenders are slanting hard inside, angled toward the backfield, and El Hadi comes out of his stance, and because his tackle to the left and the tight end beyond him, they're getting knocked back. They're not getting push.
Mhm.
When you're a pulling lineman, you need to have this spatial distance between the butt cheeks of your fellow linemen there, and because they were not getting pushed, they were knocked back. It drew his path off, And so when his defender's coming off the edge, he got hit right in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
And so it starts any good effective edge down block and kick at defensive end starts with the 2 down blocks. Those down blocks have to be clean and effective if you want to get someone clean to the edge. And that didn't happen on that play, and it was a tackle for loss or no gain.
It was actually a 3-yard loss, and it goes
Yeah.
back from the 2 to the 5. Was that play designed for the back to go outside the tackle?
No, it's designed to go inside because
Okay.
well, I take that back. The first choice is always for El Hadi or whoever the pulling guard center, doesn't matter who it is, to get to the inside armpit. So if I'm an offensive lineman, let's say I'm left guard and I'm pulling out here like El Hadi did, his target is that inside number to try to dig him out and kick him to the sideline.
Right.
And that block is supposed to go, the ball is supposed to go right inside his right butt cheek and the left butt cheek of the tight end. So you have a little gap right there, and you got to make somebody miss, get up into the end zone. If that defender pinches down inside hard, then offensive linemen are taught to what we call log block it, where you're gonna allow that defender to smash down inside. You're gonna spin your body around and help him smash down inside, and then the ball will bounce off your right butt cheek around the other side. So it just comes with reps, and it comes with repetition, and the back has to be patient to see what happens there. But none of it matters if your down blocks are not clean, because it just
Yep.
everything, all the angles and all the space just goes away if you don't have clean down blocks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I never thought I'd ever say this, but I think this is a better short yardage team running out of shotgun than it is under center. And you know what? And I hate it because
Isn't that weird?
you're 4 yards back. But you know what? When they need a short yardage play and they are in shotgun, and again, it almost seems like
Yeah.
Corum is running at the snap or something like that. They're getting it.
That's interesting. We should go
Yeah,
back. That's a film breakdown
yes,
thing, Balas. We should
we'll
go
do that.
back and look for all the short yardage and goal line plays under center versus out of the gun and see which kind of yardage we have gained. That'd be fascinating to
It
know
would
that.
be. Yep, it would be fascinating. So, and they did pick up a short yardage play. I think it was near midfield, and I think John Jansen was actually calling for a punt, and they went for it. They got it, and I was happened to be in the bathroom, so I heard Doug Karsh's call on that one. So, and it
Are
was a
the
good
walls that
call.
thin up there in that press
They
box
are
there?
not, but they are playing it through the so you can stand there, you can do two things at once. Let's put it
Yeah,
that
there
way.
you go.
So, but regardless, it was a good play, and I really feel like, and we're gonna go back and look at that, but I do like the short yardage, and part of that is because Oluwatimi has been fantastic, and this
Mhm.
guy is an absolute
He's pretty good
mauler.
in there.
I got
Yeah.
to tell you, you know what? I've seen a lot of center play at Michigan, and I go back to John Vitale, who I thought was an absolute monster. Bob Tabacino in the mid '80s. This guy is as physical and as good at center as I've seen in the run blocking game. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, he's in the category. He hasn't been here very long.
Right.
And obviously transfers in with the eligibility he's got left. But boy, what a blessing it is to have him on here. And Bastardis was all Big Ten last year, right?
Hmm.
He was really good a year ago. And so this kid shows up and he's got a little more height, a little more length in the arm, and the athletic ability to go and do what he does. You watch the Donovan Edwards runs. Oluwatimi has one of the two critical blocks on the edge. So snapping the ball and pulling out to the edge on a sweep play, not easy. Not
No.
very many people can do that effectively, and he did it more than effectively on that play. So yeah, having him in the middle there has been pretty awesome. Um, and I think we talked about this early in the season, but now against some of these better opponents, and Penn State had a pretty good interior defensive lineman there, number 91 or 97, I can't remember his name, but he was causing a little disruption there. But we settled in and took care of him too, and Oluwatimi's part of the reason for it.
Was that Mustafa? Who is that? Hodge, help us out there. Who's the because they had one, and after the game, it was James Franklin who was lamenting the fact that they were undersized at some positions. And I'm
Yeah, no, well, this kid looked like he was like the six foot
yes,
three,
right,
290 plus a biscuit,
right,
kind of range.
yep.
But he moved pretty good. He was causing some issues early in the football game, and I thought he might be a guy to
There
watch.
you go. Okay,
That's gonna cause us some problems. But we ended up handling him as well. But again, and Keegan, I think Keegan is developed. I think it appears to me that Keegan and maybe Zinter are they're the salty guys up there that are going to
yeah,
get a little bit of body language and a little juice going,
yep.
putting dudes on the ground, and then the rest of that offensive line feeds off of it, and they're coming along, and those tackles as well. Barnhart at right tackle, right? Trente is still out with the leg injury. Barnhart comes in there, and I thought did a really nice job there at right tackle, and Hayes at left. Again, this offensive line is coming along, Ballas, and this is pretty good stuff. They
I was
did
going
give
to
up the
ask.
sack.
Yeah, I
There
was
was
going to ask
one
you about
sack.
I was going to ask you about Barnhart. Did you watch him specifically?
Yeah.
Because I thought, and talking to John Jansen and some other guys, I said maybe he was a little bit slow into his pass sets a week ago. They didn't have to pass set as much this week, but I thought the run blocking, when I watched him at times, and again, unfortunately because of you, I've missed some really nice plays from the skill position players. But I thought Carson Barnhart did one hell of a job in there.
Yeah, I do too.
Hmm.
Again, as evidenced by the amount of yards that we had on the ground, you have to have 5 guys doing really well. He did a fine job, and it doesn't surprise me to see that because this is a kid who was battling for that right tackle position, and sounds like he was, right there, and Trente just beat him out a little bit coming into the season. Trente was doing a nice job over there, but I didn't feel like there was any significant drop off. I didn't feel like, oh my God, we have to slide the line to the right every time in pass pro, or we got to get somebody over there to help the right tackle. I didn't see any of that. If there was, it was certainly subtle.
Yeah.
And so he did a nice job in there for sure. And so things are settling in with this offensive line. We clearly have another guard ready to come into play. Um, there with El Hadi there when he's come in and played this year. So there's some depth here, and we're seeing this again. I don't have any idea who the next tackle is going to be in the game, but this offensive line's coming around, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, Willow. I think it was Willow Brook made a great point. It's hard to criticize the offensive line this week, and he said when you
There's
rush for
always
400,
something.
is there? But
Willow,
there is always so. Yeah,
there's
you're
always
talking to a
something.
guy. You're talking to a guy who's coached by Les Miles, and you know what? If he was a half inch off on his set, he gets a negative play
You
for
get a
that. But
negative, yeah.
right, but 418 yards is 418 yards,
That's
and they were
pretty good.
fantastic.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good. That's I would say they did a pretty good job there.
I want to come back to a point that you made about Oluwatimi, and Jansen made the same observation on the Inside Michigan Football Show about how hard it is to snap and then pull.
Mhm.
So you're talking about okay, your concentration level, you got to get that ball back there, and then boom, you got to be out in your spot just like that. How tough is
Mm.
that?
It's very well, remember now, Michigan's in the gun most of the time. So
Yeah,
that snap needs to be, within a target, you draw, in JJ's numbers or, so many inches either side of his number 9 or what that he wears there. Um, so to snap, and then you got to get a big push and get a first step to the right. You got to gain ground in that step. And then hopefully you got nobody over your shoulder here. If there is, your guard's probably going to down block, but I think on that play there wasn't. It is very difficult to snap and pull at the same time. That doesn't come with, first of all, you got to have the God given ability to do it. Clearly, Olatimi has that. I'm not sorry, Zinter, but Vistardis a year ago. And this is part of the Michigan offense. It is not something you see a lot from other college football programs. If you watch a lot of offensive line play throughout Saturday, see how many highlight plays you see out there with centers pulling. You're not going to see a bunch of it. And
right.
so it's a credit to the kid and his abilities.
How much of what we saw, and I asked McCarthy this, of was variations in the run game when we talk about adjustments, right, and doing things, you know what, and tendencies. Then you're talking. It doesn't have to be run versus pass. Like, well, they usually run out of this formation. Now they're passing, but
Mhm.
moving some things, guys. I thought the touchdown play with Donovan Edwards was something we hadn't seen a whole lot of. He called it a pin and pull play. Take us through that one 67-yard touchdown and what you saw on that play.
Well, so it was center of the field or right hash, and so we're pulling Zinter and the center, so center right guard, and so you've got to block down with a tackle. You got to get out there clean, and then one guy's going to have the first opposite color, and then the second guy's going to have the second opposite color that comes around there, and so the play was executed just about perfectly. I think it was Oloatimi that came around.
Yeah,
Somebody had the log block on the edge, and it was just a spin, right? It's just a spin to get a little bit of a push, and that's all it takes because when you're 6'5", 300 pounds, the little guy comes along the edge of even if it's a linebacker, and Edwards made the cut. Edwards stretched that thing far enough to draw those defenders in a perfect position, and then you've got the key block to log to the inside, and then you got the other one to get out on the edge. And it was just perfect. So when you say pull and pin, yeah, you're pulling offensive linemen, but the pinning part is smashing everything down inside, so you don't have the leakers coming over the top. When you're taught to down block or gap block, as they say, if you're the right tackle or you're the tight end, doesn't matter. The rule is nothing can penetrate the gap to your inside. So you're taking a horizontal flat first step with your left foot if you're the right tackle or a right tight end. And then you've got to work that defensive lineman down flat. Nothing can get penetrated because if they do, it knocks off your pulling lineman. And so then your line mate is going to come down and probably hit a hip with you, the defender's hip, on his way up to a linebacker. That's the way any of those plays work, whether it's that pull and pin, the one that Edwards scored on, or if it's Michigan's bread and butter, bring a tight end across the formation, down block the front side, and fill the front side, to get to a front side linebacker. It's all very similar, but it all starts with that first step to to zero out or clean up that hole to the inside. And so and the opposite of this is when Michigan was having some struggles, we weren't getting clean, flat down blocks. We were having some penetration. So the alternative to that is, well, if you want to pinch our edges, then we're going to take advantage of that and we're going to go right at the middle of the offense. We're going to go right behind our center and two guards because it's tough to do, that Michigan style of gap down and front side fill when everybody's pinching the edge. So you go right at them, and that's what the Corum run looked like, Balas. So there's your alternative, because you can't, if you're a defense, you can't do it all, because you're going to do that. Then we're going to toss right over your head, and you're going to be dead in the water that way.
Yeah, the hole for the Corum run was amazing. This is I think, the end of the chicken sandwich run late in the game where Donovan Edwards, those guys at the goal line inside the 5, it was like, all right, we're out of here.
He walked in on that
He
one.
did walk in on that one. And that's when I thought of you, and I thought about, hey, Chick-fil-A sounds pretty good. Absolutely.
The white box, it comes in that little white cardboard box. You open it up, and there's your little saran wrap chicken sandwich and a bag of chips and a Snickers bar, and you got a Gatorade for your trip home, and you just kind of go, oh boy.
Yeah. That's great. The linemen only get one, or did they get two? 2 boxes?
No, I think we only got one.
Okay.
So we'd get home we'd get home from road trips because sometimes those later games you get home late at night, and that's what the pizza place was open for. It's late.
Okay.
You get home, and then at that time we didn't have cell phones, so you had to figure out a way to get an order into Cottage Inn before they closed. But if you were on the losing end, that chicken sandwich didn't taste as good.
I was going to ask you about that.
It just didn't taste as good.
And Mike Idelson didn't mind that you guys were stuffing your faces after a game like that?
Well, we had weigh-in, so it was always on our minds at all times. We did have to weigh in on a regular basis, but after a football game, when you've burned God knows how many calories and probably sweat out 10 pounds of fluids, it was okay to eat.
Okay, let's talk about, since we're talking about strength coaches here, the job that Ben Herbert has done with this team in the last couple of years, and listening to James Franklin talk about his guys and how they seemed undersized, and not everybody's Aaron Donald, and they think they might be. And it almost sounded like he was throwing somebody under the bus. All due respect, Hutch, it seems like he does that quite a bit. Some of these used car salesmen do that, but give him credit for the job that he has done with these guys, their bodies, and how they've developed, and the way they've been manhandling teams on both sides of the ball. Look at Mike Morris on 3rd down and 1 early in that game, getting off a block, and that Penn State, that Penn State offensive line was no match for those defensive linemen either. So got to give a nod to Ben Herbert there.
So 2 things. There's 2 things about a great strength coach. Obviously, the program itself, understanding the limits of which you can take your players, and oftentimes, as I experienced and many of my teammates, you have to get past the mental part of your body telling you to please stop because this really sucks and it's painful. To take a player to the edge of his physical capabilities is one thing. You're clearly going to go beyond the mental to build that toughness. But the one indicator the point that I wanted to get to, Balas, the one indicator that every strength coach gets measured on is how many injuries. What's the overall injury factor on the football team? And I'm not talking about the freak one time, weird stuff. Michigan, with the exception of Trente, and Trente's injury was because he got held up in a spot. But without a strong, physical, deep-winded, and I mean guys that can run, offense and defensive line, you're in trouble. And so, the days of it's all applicable today, because if we go back to the 91 Rose Bowl, we were all fat and out of shape. We weren't ready to play in that game. Too many meals from Thanksgiving till the bowl game started. And so I flash forward and look at a guy like Mozzie Smith now, who's gotten himself into the greatest shape since he's been there. And, he reminds me a little bit of Big Mike Onwenu, right? And the guy, we watched him play Balas. We'd watch this film and be like, boy, he doesn't look like he's got the physical. He's not physically prepared to be at his highest level. But then what happened his last year? Big Mike Onwenu gets in the best shape of his life, and now he's kicking ass in the NFL, and it's awesome to see. Mozzie Smith the same way. So when you have a great strength program, and then you got a young man or a group of young men that decide we're all in on this, and I'm going to dedicate myself to have some serious discipline to take advantage of it, this is what the results are. An
Yeah.
offensive line that's kicking butt and a defensive line who doesn't need Hutch and Ajabo anymore. They're coming into their own because they've worked their butts off.
Yeah, and these guys stay in the background. I don't think Mike Goodison hardly. I think he did a Sports Illustrated interview where somebody misquoted him, and I don't think he ever did another one after that. And the only time I think we talked to Ben Herbert was in France, and I think Angelique was the one who had the guts to go up to him first. I'm thinking, this guy
They're all
looks like,
scary.
yeah, they are scary. I'm thinking
All
this guy
strength
can,
coaches are scary people.
yeah, he can beat the crap out of me. Number one, number two, what are the extradition laws here? We're in France, maybe the laws are different here. And if he doesn't like a question I'm asking, he's gonna take me underneath the Eiffel Tower and kick my ass or
I,
something.
I
But
know that when the strength and conditioning position was named after Mike Gittleson, I know that
yes,
Coach Herbert was very honored by that, and
yes. And
and
by the
so
way, he was
yeah,
a great guy to talk to and was very open and honest with us. And he wasn't one of those rah-rah guys that's like, this is what we do and this is how I do it and
no,
this is what we drink and this is what we do and everything else. He was matter of fact and is not one of those guys to take the credit. But you know what? Deserves all the credit. Herb, if you're watching, fantastic job. So,
yeah,
another thing, great to have Mike Hart back on the sidelines
oh
on
yeah,
Saturday, and you could tell how much it meant to those kids. And he was actually at Dexter watching Cole Cabana on Thursday night or Friday night rather, and we're thinking, okay, he's going to be there on Saturday, which is fantastic. So to have him
yeah.
back is great.
Oh, that's a big deal. So
Hmm.
again, remember what I mentioned earlier, Ballas, when you see good things happening on the football field, the sideline is engaging in each other. They're happy for each other. You can see there's relationships. This isn't just a team that's fractioned into an offense, a defense, special teams, O line, secondary. These guys are together, and when their coaches are there as well, then again, it's hard to describe, but that is the special sauce that every championship program has, because there's a lot of football programs out there that can bring in all kinds of talent. Guys are great players, go on to the NFL and do great things, but they just don't win together. It's not the same feeling.
Yep.
And these are the kinds of things that galvanize a football program. And decades from now, when these guys get together, it's going to be like they were never apart. We're our classes like that. I saw on television they celebrated the '97 team. We're together. I know those guys are like that, and we admire all these championship teams. Last year's Michigan team that won the Big Ten, they will be admired in the same way. But it all starts with guys that like to be around each other, have fun, kicking people's butts.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing right now. So, was it evident early? I thought on the first series for Penn State, I could tell that Penn State's offensive line was overmatched here, and Michigan's
Oh,
line is not huge. But I tell you what, they played with an edge on Saturday, and they were suspect. I thought Penn State coming in, but especially at right tackle, to me, it just looked like they had no
Balas,
chance.
they ran six. There was 8 minutes left in the second quarter, and Penn
Yeah,
State had run 6 plays.
yeah, yeah,
That's buzz saw. Oh my
yeah,
God, we're seeing ghosts. Like when you can see when they zoom in on the Penn State huddle, it's like, what are we doing here? We're
yeah.
getting our asses kicked. Can we even get a first down?
Right,
And anybody that's played football and been in a huddle, you know that feeling. We've all been through it either in high school, college, or wherever. It is not a good feeling.
right.
That was Penn State. And then one well placed read option where the quarterback keeps it, and then a fluky pass, and boom, they're right back into it. But
Yeah,
you just had a feeling like Michigan's sideline was like, this is a bunch of BS. We've
yep.
given up two stupid plays. We're going to absolutely beat you down. And that's what Michigan went on to do.
And instead, Penn State goes up the tunnel, and I wrote this in my column, and they start chirping.
Oh
And I'm
boy.
thinking, you guys had one first down the entire first half, I think it was. It was like 18-1,
Yeah.
and you're chirping in the tunnel. I don't think you needed to give them that motivation.
No, and you know what? The more chirping, the better, I suppose. And
Yeah,
and here in a couple weeks, I hope there's some chirping going on because it certainly feels like this Michigan team is got some memories of last year's game up there in East Lansing that they're ready to take some action on. But yeah, that tunnel, and they talked about it on television. That tunnel can get a little dicey in there,
hmm,
because there's not a lot of room in there. When you put two football teams of 80 guys, 90 guys, and all the support staff together, there's a lot of testosterone in a small area, Ballast. It's like a powder keg. So,
yeah.
hey, whatever. It works to our advantage, and it worked to our advantage once again.
Yeah, twice now. If you go back to the Ohio State game, and now this one. So, and it is the Michigan guys did say it was the Penn State guys that were starting to chirp. So, it was fun though. It was fun to see them, and I give Penn State credit. They come out and they take a lead, but you never get the feeling with this team in the last 2 years that it's going to phase them. And teams of the past are wilting, right? The Michigan teams of, I can go back to 2016, 17, 18 when things start going badly, they snowball. These guys are like JJ McCarthy said, we don't even look at the score. We're about what we're doing on the next play, and that's how it used to be in when you guys played.
Yeah, that's the way it has to be. If you're
Yeah.
staring at the scoreboard, you're going to have problems. But really, Harbaugh teams, boy, it was up until 2 years ago,
Hmm.
right? Harbaugh teams, when adversity came and interceptions or other plays by other teams and big touchdown plays or whatever, boy, there was some collapsing that went on right through the 2020 season, right? Balas, the COVID year,
Yep.
which was a disaster. Um, but at Wisconsin last year and at Nebraska last year is where I believe the fork in the road was taken, and we went down the correct path. In that both of those games, although we can argue about the legitimacy of those opponents, those are difficult environments to win in. And Michigan went in both of those games. I really believe that this current team understands, and they're on that same path. That they know adversity is part of playing this game in a football afternoon, and so. But again, it doesn't phase them. When we get the ball back, we're going to come back and I'm going to block the
Yep.
crap out of you. I'm going to put you on the ground and embarrass you in front of your parents. So let's just do this.
Let's go
That's
higher in Frisco. It's like you read my column. I wrote the same thing, 55-3. Had they not had the two mishaps, one I think was a linebacker who probably was out of position and read the play wrong. But you know what? Those guys were
yeah,
in the backfield on that one too, and I think Michael Barrett almost had him by the feet, and he escapes. You're right. That's exactly
yeah.
right, D. And so you know what? Stuff happens. You come back, you make some plays, and then when they got up, I thought they went for two a little early. I got yelled at on Twitter by some mean people for saying it's too early with 11 minutes to go in the third quarter to be going for two. But regardless, it didn't matter anyway. So,
Yeah,
yep. So
yeah.
we're on to Michigan State skiing. We're going to do a midweek podcast this week, I think, and talk about that one on a little bit more. But I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night and thank everybody, including Manscaped. Remember, 20 Go Blue at manscaped.com to order. There's another one in here about the werewolf in your pants. I'm not going to read that one. I will read that one in the middle of the week. I think we put the skiing through enough scary hell here today. So
Hey, that reading wasn't as bad as some others that we've done
exactly.
on this, but
Well,
this one
there were a
was
couple
this one
bullet
was
points I missed,
yeah,
but
well, okay. They're
but
they're always entertaining.
exactly. But 20 Go Blue at manscaped.com. Doug Skene, I know he uses his. Sometimes he shaves his.
Gotta
Uh,
keep that tight.
there you go, brother. So just make sure you wash between uses. So, but thank you, folks, for listening. And Skene, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you in the middle of the week.
All right, go blue.